Hello, fellow psychonauts. This is my rant. I don't know how to start this dialogue, and so this is how my dialogue shall start. Lots of people say they have experienced ego death on psychedelics, and I've heard many of these people's stories of what their ego death was. And they were all different. Something I had sought, although not so much anymore. And even further to my point, I don't believe they ego death at all. So what is ego death? What is a psychedelic? I'm not sure I can answer either. These are fundamental questions regarding the nature of reality, consciousness, and the human experience. Then let us first break down what the ego is. We shall go into its roots before I can begin to explain what it would mean for such a thing to die. It is the mind's reference. It is I. I was, I am, I will. It contains the past, the present, the future. I am Crane contains your character, your identities. Past the point you realize the walls you see, the people you talk to, the clouds in the sky, these are all creations, your ego. These are the shadows on the wall that you call reality, and beyond that glimpse, inward you find truth and find it blinding. So then what would it mean to destroy your ego? To leave this cave, to find enlightenment, to go to a realm beyond space, time, and persona? To be frank, I'm not even certain if this is what ego death means. However, I would imagine it as such. And so I recall these stories and asked, have they truly killed their ego? Have they been enlightened? Its term is ultimately a spiritual practice, as it is a philosophy. Desire causes suffering, and so by letting go of desire do you leave behind suffering. And so I will recall, rather than said their words, but their actions. I have spoken to many who have claimed ego death, to be enlightened. And yet how many fell to wrath, to vice, to jealousy? None of them acted in a manner that could be described as a life without desire. Now, I do not wish to downplay the significance of their journey, their trip, but you cannot ascribe every profound spiritual phenomenon to enlightenment. I'm only wise in that I am a fool who knows he is a fool, and yet these so-called wise men will loudly proclaim their wisdom. Those who know me may find this strange, but I'm actually very cautious when speaking of matters of the soul. It is something I take seriously. I often worry I may drag another down with me to the steps of hell. I do not wish for people to see me as a leader, as an example. I do not want the responsibility. I am happy being and even sometimes playing the fool. I find it funny. A fool playing as a fool. I suppose it does not change my nature, whether I pretend or not. And so now I wish to relate this back to psychedelia. It is a word whose roots come from psyche and helios, meaning mind and manifestation. However, I wonder, is that its function or its purpose? So allow me to make my argument that it is its purpose, although some will say that it is its function. An example of such a man would be none other than Joe Rogan. Now I can already imagine the eyebrows being raised, the dismay you may have, so please allow myself a chance to defend myself. I don't watch his show, but I have watched some segments wherein he speaks of his experiences with psychedelics. He had shared an allegory of his experiences and related it to the Buddha. In his travel, the Buddha came across another mystic. He claimed that he had meditated every day for 20 years, and now he can walk across water. The Buddha had asked why. The fairy is a nickel. Had you practiced insight, you would already be enlightened. He made the argument that practicing meditation and insight would be the same as practicing to float for 20 years. He made the argument that practicing meditation and insight would be the same as practicing for 20 years to float on water. Why waste your time and energy looking inward for wisdom, clarity, and truth when you can take a drug? I can see the logic. I just think it's a false equivalency. To prove my point, I will tell the story of Siddhartha, the original Buddha. He was to become king after the death of his older brother. He would have everything: material wealth, power, and women, all at his beck and call. But he sought a higher power, sought a different path. He would seek enlightenment, ego death. And so he would go on journeys of meditation and asceticism. He would forego all earthly things, food and water. Yeah, and yet, he still felt an earthly pull. No matter how hard he tried, he would not attain ego death, until a realization had washed over him. He did not care to be enlightened, and that is when enlightenment hit him. His desire for ego death was itself a desire. And so then, let us return to the word tripping. It is a trip. You are taking a journey through your mind. You will hear stories from those well initiated. A trip can last what feels to be 1,000 years, traveling realities. Does this really sound easier than simply meditating, the simple action of sitting? I could not think of anything easier, of putting your mind to rest. Do I believe people have ego death on psychedelics? I do believe so. But it was not the drug itself that brought this. You had gone on this soul-seeking journey, this great trip, only to find that there is nothing there. Which then brings me to my final point. There's a notion from the psychedelic community that ego death is impossible. They will tell you thus: I have done journeys of which you cannot conceive, taken amounts that would drive any man to insanity. And it is true. I will not discredit them. I cannot begin to fathom what such an experience is like. And so they again will go on grander and grander journeys, so lost in their minds, and you will see them forever searching outwards. More drugs, mixed drugs. They do not look within. So then the question remains, what is a psychedelic? What does it do? What is its purpose? It does enact on the ego. The walls twist, thought becomes reality. It breaks the narrative, thought patterns begin to dissolve. You're forced to confront the blinding truth, the uncomfortable truth, that from which the ego protects. Your ills and wrongs, responsibility, simply shows you that the shadows are indeed shadows. What one does upon the realization is up to them. I do not claim enlightenment. I am simply the half-blind man. He who has glanced just a moment of truth. Sometimes I glance beyond its walls, only to return to the comfort in the darkness. One must be brave to go beyond. Perhaps one day it will be me.